What do you see as the future of pirate radio? I mean, it would seem to me as, I guess I would say as things break down,
yeah, I've noticed it.
more and more, that there would be incentive for people of various bents. Let's hope there are some progressives involved who would say, you know, we're going to take it to the street, so to speak, or to the hills, or to the alley. Do you see this as a phenomenon that is going to grow, or do you think that the low-power licenses that the FCC has given out will inhibit the rebellious aspect of it?
Yeah, well, the FCC can now claim, if you're a pirate, that you have a legal option. And so they've used that to try to squelch people who do pirate radio. But many people, regardless of that, are continuing to go on the air. Let me tell you a little bit about the station that I'm presently involved in on a small island, because islands are interesting laboratories for the future. And basically that station is called Tree Frog Radio. It's a radio station that involves many members of the community who don't typically have a public voice in community debates and discussions. There is, for example, an all-French Quebecois show, otherwise you wouldn't hear French language radio. There are a number of immigrants who find their voice on that radio station. There are renters who have a voice as opposed to property owners. The whole thing is financed and supported by the island. The island, in many ways, even though it was an anarchist project, initiated by anarchists, has thought of it as their community station, and everybody who has the ability to go on is very supportive of it as well. So we find that we can finance ourselves, and our financing costs like $35 a month to pay for electricity. That's our only cost, simply by recycling bottles in a bin that says Tree Frog Radio. We also have self-defense, community self-defense. And that's a term that I use for the fact that there are some ferry workers who have radio shows. And if the CRTC, which is like your FTC, is heading towards the island, they'll let us know and we'll shut down the station. The chief of the fire department, there's a volunteer fire department, they have an emergency kind of setup. If the CRTC is coming to check out their emergency setup, they'll call us up on the phone and say, look, you might want to stay off the air for a while today. So we have a lot of support financially and other ways.
How big an island is the island that Tree Frog is on, and can you tell us that island?
Yeah, I can tell it to you here, I guess. It's not a clandestine station, really, actually. There are 1,000 people on the island. It's about the size of Manhattan Island, but a lot less dense.
Now, are the Canadian community, whatever they're called, what do you see? What are they called? Like the FCC?
The CRTC.
Are they as, you know, we have a notion here, or not a notion, we know that the FCC has been a pretty conservative force in recent years. I know that Canada has had a change in government, moved a little to the right, at least in the Prime Minister.
Sure. Yeah.
But what is the, how do they compare to the FCC?
They're very much like the FCC. It's a complaint-driven process, and the fact that there have been no complaints and we've been on for 3.5 years shows that we have community support.
We're talking to Ron Sakolsky, the author of Seizing the Airwaves, a free radio handbook. You're listening to WLUW 88.7's Live from the Heartland, where you can hear us every Saturday morning from 9 to 10. And you can also hear a lot of other great community programming as well as music on WLUW, Loyola University's community radio station. Ron, you mentioned kind of anarchists had set up the station, and I just happened to have a copy of Surrealist Subversions, Rants, Writings, and Images by the Surrealist Movement in the United States. And it's edited by you with a foreword by our neighbor, Franklin Rosemont, who...
Right.
Just happens to be sitting over there in the dining room here at the Heartland Cafe. And could you tell us a little bit about, tell us about this book and give us a definition of surrealism and how that relates to anarchism. How's that?
Okay, that's certainly something I'd be pleased to talk about. The last time that I was at the Heartland, which was 6 years ago before I left the States, was for a surrealist event. So I know that the Heartland Cafe has always been a welcoming place for that kind of thing. When I put this book together, it's a pretty comprehensive book. As you know, you're listening it.
It's thick. I'm holding it up for the video camera. Someday maybe you will all see this on the Heartland Internet TV, which is in the works. For more information, you would go to www.heartlandcafe.com. Go, Ron.
Yeah, and basically the book is meant to be a comprehensive volume focusing on the Chicago Surrealist group. So Chicago is at the heart of the book. And the approach that I took had to do with the connections between surrealism and anarchy. Not every piece in the book has those connections immediately up front, but that's the idea that I tried to bring together. So the idea of demanding the impossible, which is an anarchist idea, fits very well with the surreal.
Commanding or demanding?
Demanding. Commanding is your idea.
As the one who studied a little democratic centralism there for a while.
Yeah. So demanding the impossible means you're sort of in favor of expanding the idea of what's possible. And instead of settling for a miserablest kind of reality, to use surrealist terms, you look for an exalted kind of reality that is more in tune with surrealism. So I see the two as very much connected.
I like this notion of miserablesism.
So do I. Yeah, it's a
very
evocative term, right?
Why don't you give us a succinct definition of surrealism and then one of anarchism, just so I can listen to it and work it into my own repertoire of various raps.
Well, maybe you should get Franklin up here to give us
he's been up here plenty. Another time. You do your best on this one.
Okay, well, if we're talking about surrealism, we're talking about moving beyond the limits of what's usually considered reality. So we're talking about a movement that is desirous of creating a world in which people can live more poetic lives and connecting the idea of the dream and reality so that reality isn't so impoverished and so miserable. If we're talking about anarchy, we're also talking about creating new worlds that are free of domination, free of any form of hierarchy, and exploring the possibilities of what could be rather than of the as-is.
We are talking with Ron Sakolsky, and I want to ask you in our closing moments of this section of Live from the Heartland Radio, where one would find Seizing the Airwaves, a free radio handbook. Who published it, and how's it distributed? Is it out there in the world in bookstores? Is it on Amazon? Is it?
Yeah, it's published by AK Press.
Oh, AK Press. I've met those people. They're really good. They put out a lot of great material.
They're on the Bay Area, so it's readily available there, as well as other places.
Anarchist Press?
Yes, good old Anarchist Press. And Surrealist Subversions is put out by Otana Media, and actually is also carried by AK Press Distribution.
Ron, do you have any way that people can contact you, a phone number, a website, an email, or do you have any words of wisdom and inspiration to give to all of the listeners for Live from the Heartland?
Yeah, I'll do the words of inspiration. Go on the air. Go on the air. Go
on the air. More radio. More radio. Let me ask you one last thing. How do you see pirate radio? The thing that I got to say I've been thinking a lot about is doing kind of internet radio and TV. Do you see some kind of a link between those two, a way they would work together?
Well, yeah, there is a way they work together. There are some pirate stations that will stream internet and use that as part of their broadcasts.
Stream the internet.
That.
Okay, thanks so much. Let's have a big round of applause for Ron. And we'll be right back with a little more Live from the Heartland. Our next guest will be Jayla Neal, and she's from the Rogers Park Community Development Group, and they have a big plan to do a planning process that seeks to engage community residents, and stakeholders to identify and address the quality of life issues in Rogers Park. So we're going to take a short musical break. Suzanne over at the studio has picked out some music, and we'll be right back with more Live from the Heartland here on the left end of your dial. Don't go away. We'll be right back.